Whether you call them new gens or regens, there's nothing quite as good in Football Manager as finding that wonder kid player. Now, my name is Luke and my channel is LS Plays FM, and I'm delighted to be back today as a guest here on FMSCOUT to bring to you a brand new video looking at the 5 best nations to find new gen players in. Now, before we do get going in today's video, guys, if you do enjoy this video and find it to be helpful, make sure to go and drop a like down onto it, and if you're not already, get yourself subscribed to FMSCOUT and hit that notification bell. And if you want to come over and check out my own channel, there'll be a link down into it in the description. I make various videos for FM21 such as tutorials, tactic videos, experiments and let's play series, and you can use that link, come on over and drop a sub onto my own channel. Hopefully I'll see you over there as well. But let's get into this video here today and look at the 5 best nations to find new gen players in. Now, when it comes to new gen development in Football Manager 21, the main thing that affects this is what is known as the youth importance for each country. It effectively means that for that country in question, how important is it to bring through young players? Now, this rating is static in the game. It cannot be changed unless you go into like your editor and actually change it. But there are other things as well which affect youth development. Now, if you were just to simply look at that youth importance rating, your 5 best nations in world football for developing youngsters would be Brazil, Germany, Italy, France and Argentina. Now, I'm not just going to be basing my nations off of this factor because that's number one, it's too simple. There's lots of other things which can affect it, and also some of those nations, especially Germany, Italy, France, it can often be near impossible to ever actually buy any of those young players that come through from teams. The other factors we're going to focus on are ones such as the junior coaching, youth recruitment and the youth facilities as well as a few other little bits and pieces. I won't go into detail in terms of what each of these actually do. We're just going to focus on the nations which you should be scouting in game. Now, the other thing as well just to be aware of is that if you load in the leagues and the players that from the nations that we're going to be talking about, it will mean that you will have more players available to you from each of those respective nations. So when you start a new game, you get asked to load in all different leagues. If you load in the leagues on the nations I'm going to be talking about today, you're more likely come across more players available to you. Now, I have here on the screen a Football Manager save. I've gone a couple of years in to do a bit of a test save, and what we do is we'll be talking about each of the different nations, a couple of interesting clubs to focus on, and I'll show you a couple of good examples of new gen players I have found from each of those sides. Now, the first nation we're going to be focusing on is, of course, without any doubt, Brazil. Now, I mentioned them as being one of the top nations for the youth importance, and it's not only the youth importance, also their recruitment, their coaching, and their facilities are often quite good. And you can see on the screen, I've got a short list here of some players of Brazilian nationality who I found who are all new gen players. And there's so many good players to find over there in Brazil. It's always worth scouting. It really, really is. It's littered all the time with so many good young players. The 3 main clubs though to definitely focus on as well if you are going to do scouting over there in Brazil, always worth checking out the youth squads and stuff like that, is Sao Paulo, Flamengo and Santos. I've got a couple of players just from their teams alone, and you can see Sao Paulo, Flamengo, Santos, all the potential in the world from these players. They've got decent abilities as well, and they're just always fantastic young players. We have a look at a couple of these youngsters on here. Let's go with, say, Paulo Roberto here from Sao Paulo. He's a 17-year-old winger who's got great mentals, very good physicals, decent technicals at 17, and I suppose they're a 5-star rated potential player for Manchester United. There's other players on here as well who we're going to have a quick look at. If we go and have a quick look over at Luis Roberto here at Santos, a winger who can play right across the front line, very decent technicals, again 17 years old, decent-ish mentals and good physicals too, and once again 5-star potential. So without a doubt, the first place always to focus on is Brazil, and to get your scouts over there to try and find some young wonder kid talent coming through. Now, next on our list is Portugal, and of course, as we all know, with Portugal, you get some fantastic players, Cristiano Ronaldo being the pick of the bunch in real life, of course, but with new gens, they are very consistent with coming through with decent players, that is for sure. Many of the Portuguese sides have fantastic facilities and youth recruitment and everything like that, and I've got a list of some of the decent Portuguese players I've already found who are young new gen players coming through only 3 years into the game. Of course, club-wise, you have Sporting, Porto, and you have Benfica being the 3 main names for Portugal, but other sides as well, likes of Braga, Maritimo, Pacos de Ferreira and Boa Vista are all decent other sides to keep an eye on. They all have good facilities and so on, and can occasionally pull through very decent players. If I look, for example, at Jose Silva here, who comes from Pacos de Ferreira, he's a very, very good young player in this game. Very well rounded, only 17 years of age. 5-star potential, going to become probably one of the best left backs in world football, no doubt. And at Pacos de Ferreira, you could probably get him very cheaply as well, which is one of the benefits of some of these other clubs in Portugal. Another one, the Maritimo player here, Daniel Cabo. He, again, is 17 years of age, a striker winger player, very good physicals, decent mentals, okay technicals. At 17, going to become very good 5-star potential and very, very cheap. So again, with Portugal, similar to Brazil, really, great set of players often coming through, and quite consistently, they can be very cheap if you avoid the 3 big teams over there in Portugal. Now, next on our list is Belgium, of course, one of the best sides arguably in world football currently, and their new gens are nothing else but spectacular, at least in the vast majority. I've got a few of their players up here on the screen in my shortlist, and there's some really good teams you can focus on over there in Belgium, like the Standard Liège, Anderlecht, Club Brugge and Genk, just to name a few. But realistically, the vast majority of the Belgian sides all have great facilities, great recruitment, and often pull through some very good players. Now, sometimes with the Belgian players, they can be a little bit on the pricey side. It depends on what clubs you go for and, of course, how good they are. But you can see here, of course, with Manchester United as my team, there's some 5-star potential players rated for Man U, 4.5 stars, 4 stars, and a few 3.5 stars that I've already found in this test. So we have a look at, say, for example, Fiston Kitenge from Anderlecht, a decent, I say decent, a very good ball-winning midfielder, actually. Great technicals, fantastic mentals, decent physicals. At the age of 17, he's going to become a fantastic player, that is for sure. And a couple of other players as well. Let's have a look at, say, Stefan Lambert here from Charleroi, one of the smaller sides over there in Belgium. A fantastic player coming through who could maybe get on a slightly cheaper deal, quite possibly. But there really are some fantastic players to keep an eye on over there at Belgium, and I would most definitely recommend you get your scouts over there and get looking at some Wonder Kid new gens coming through. Now, the 4th nation we're going to be focusing on here today is Argentina. It wouldn't be any other way, really. If you're going to include Brazil when it comes to young players, you've got to include Argentina as well, realistically speaking. Much like their South American compatriots, Argentina pull through some absolutely fantastic players. Of course, they have the likes of Messi, Aguero in real life, and their new gens are no different, that is for sure. In terms of the teams to focus on, you of course have Boca Junior and River Plate, the 2 big sides in Argentina, but other sides to focus on as well, definitely Vélez and Newell's Old Boys, as well as really the vast majority of the Argentinian sides, but those 4 are definitely the 4 main ones which have the best facilities and so on, and more consistently bring through the best players. Vélez, who I mentioned to have by far the best player I've got on my shortlist in terms of the players I found from Argentina. Fabrizio Gallinari here, he's a midfielder, a right-sided midfielder winger, very decent player, great physicals, great mentals at the age of 16 and very decent technicals. Probably wouldn't really play as a winger, but he has decent technicals anyway, and at the age of 16 he's only just going to get better. 5-star potential, very good player. There's another one here, Brian Guerrero from Rosario Central, one of the smaller sides over there in Argentina, quite cheap by the looks of it. Decent player, once again, 5-star potential according to the scouts. But that is one of the benefits of Argentina. Much like Brazil, you can often get quite cheap players who are very technically gifted and have fantastic potential. So most definitely worth sending your scouts over to Argentina to find those new gen players. Now, the final nation we can focus on regarding the new gen scouting is Uruguay. Now, again, much like the other South American nations we focused on, you can get some fantastic players from Uruguay. They're often very cheap and they're very easy to get convinced to come to your club. Now, when it comes to Uruguay, your main teams you want to be focusing on are most definitely Danubio, Defensa Sporting, Club Nacional and Peñarol. They all have the best facilities by far and have very consistent youth players that they come through and of a high standard. Now, in the case of these ones here, they've got decent potential, all 3.5-star players, and the one thing you often get with the Uruguayan players is they are often at a very decent ability level as well. The key player here, Nahul Duarte from Danubio, a very decent winger, 17 years of age, good physicals, decent mentals, decent technicals, all at the age of 17, a really good player, and you can see that about his estimated cost and wage demands are all really low. So especially if you're a smaller side, you're managing a smaller team, focus on getting your scouts over to Uruguay because you can pick up some absolute gems for complete pennies in comparison to some of the other nations we've mentioned on this list and just some of the other nations in general across world football. So definitely focus on Uruguay if possible. Now, that is all 5 of our nations covered and gone through. There's also a couple of honourable mentions I will just cover. Those are Honduras, Norway and Turkey. All very, very decent nations to consider looking at, especially in the case of Honduras and Norway, if you are a smaller team, once again, much like with Uruguay, because you can get some really good players who are really, really cheap. Turkey are really good at consistently bringing through good players. They're often a little bit pricey though. Norway, Honduras can pull through some absolute gems who are very, very cheap. So keep an eye on those nations. Could well find a complete and utter diamond in the rough in those nations. Overall though guys, that just about brings this video here today, looking at the 5 best nations to find new gen players in to a close. I really hope you can find this video to be useful and you can utilise it in your own FM21 saves. Of course, if you did find the video to be useful and you enjoyed the video, then do make sure to chuck a like down onto it. And if you're not already, get yourself subscribed to FMSCOUT and to hit that notification bell as well. And if you want to come and check out my own channel, as I mentioned earlier in the video, use the link down in the description. Come along, drop a sub, check out some of the content, and hopefully I'll see you over there on the channel as well. But guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next time.